We need to just be silly, be goofy, be okay with being just silly and being awkward. And it's actually so good for you. It's so good to help drop stress, drop cortisol. All right, welcome to Boss Bitch Radio. If you are here for the part 2 of the last podcast that I dropped, you're in the right spot. Now, if you're new here and like, what are you talking about? We're going to drop the link to episode 1. This is a part 2. And you might want to take a listen to that one first. Okay. That will set you up to finish the job. Okay. And that episode is called What If It's Not Overwhelm? It's Anxiety. And it really will give you good context for the rest of this conversation. So if you're picking up where we left off, how did it feel listening to part 1? Did it bring awareness for you of overwhelm that you didn't really frame as anxiety, or burnout that you didn't realize was anxiety showing up? Right? They're all very, like I said, they all are in different rooms of the same home. Anxiety, overwhelm, and burnout. They all kind of come up together in what we see with women. And I hope you're ready to dive in. I'm going to share with you some of the things that I've done to curate a low stress lifestyle. Now, I know you guys have, those of you that have been here, you've heard me talk about the things that the big picture items that I really have had to release, but I am also going to talk about some other things that you might not think about. Now, some sources of anxiety for a lot of women are they're not doing enough, right? I'm not doing enough with my workouts. I'm not being perfect enough with my eating. I'm not doing enough with my steps. I'm not doing enough with my water, but we're not taking a moment to like look back and look at everything else that we are doing. Okay. Now, one thing that I've had to do is reset my expectations on my old way of exercising. And the reason why is because my self-limiting belief was that I was only being effective or worthy if I was in the gym like 6 days a week, because that was how it was when I was a bodybuilder, right? And then it was, okay, I'm good with 4 days a week, right? And then when I wasn't meeting that, then I was beating myself up about that. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Bop, 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 right? But hang on, because I'm going to tell you about what I'm doing and sort of offer that up for those of you that are also really stuck on one way of doing things. Because I think as we get older, it's a lot easier to just get into our habits, right? The old saying of you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I believe there is some heavy weight to that, but I think if you're the right dog, you're willing, and you just need the right mind frame and be open to doing things differently, right? So I reset my expectations on that. Now, I've given myself a sigh of relief. I don't feel like I need to be in the gym 4 to 6 days a week. And it's because I have worked on some other things that I know I needed, right? And I'm not avoiding some things. So really taking a look at like how my body's feeling and what are the actual data markers, right? Like, what is my body fat? I had my body fat tested, and listen, I have been as low as a lean and disgusting 7% body fat, and my body fat has gone up as high as, I think in my adult life that I ever remember, maybe like 28 or 29% or something, which is still, you know, it's not. And listen, this is like in my adult life in fitness, and when I've actually had it measured, it's definitely been higher than that. But I'm saying it in a point where I've been like just trying to be proactive about my health and maybe fix some things with all of that, right? Because it's super important to just be in a healthy body fat range. So for me, I reset the bar, right? You have to reset the bar. So if you're causing yourself overwhelm and distress and anxiety about the body that you don't have and that you think that you got to do these things, sometimes you just need to look and see like, okay, but what's the bottom line here, right? I was having anxiety over not meeting my unrealistic expectations. So I know, I'm like, do I sound crazy yet? I know. Welcome. Hi, my name's Diane. So again, 5 to 6 days a week, I went down to 2 days. All right. And I vacillated back and forth for a while now as to whether or not I really wanted to share that I'm weight training 2 days a week, because it could sound like, wow, you're a bodybuilding coach. You have health and fitness programs. You have clients that work out 4 to 6 days a week. They're all in different areas. Not all my clients do that, by the way. Okay. Some of my clients are similar to me. They're 2 to 3 days in the gym because they're doing all these other things that I'm about to talk to you about. But for me, my sort of boundary with myself is 2 days. And that is more from a perspective of knowing that this is what I've been doing already for about 3 months, is 2 days, maybe 3 days. Okay. More 2 days. And I just had my body fat tested. I had a DEXA scan, incredibly accurate. My body fat was 19%. Now, for me, in the phase of life I'm in, what's important to me is to not have a lifestyle that causes me anxiety or constant, what I call food noise, right? Where I'm like constantly thinking about food and I'm always fucking hungry and like dieting makes me want to stab my eyes out. And, I don't want that anymore. That's not peaceful for me to have that. Like I have so many other things I would rather be focused on, like making a really great podcast for you guys on managing your anxiety. Okay. But for me, I know that I'm comfortable between 18 and probably 22% for health, longevity, moving around in my body, the activities that I like to enjoy, how I feel like I show up in my clothes and feel comfortable and all that. Okay. Then I also need to think of, and this is what I ask you to do, what kind of movement for you helps you reduce your anxiety and your overwhelm. Okay. Now, I want you to set aside your to-do list and think of, well, I just don't do it because I just feel like I have too many things to do, because we already tackled that, right? You're clearing space for you to reduce your anxiety. And so how does that work for you? For me, walking and yoga, okay? Those two things help me manage my anxiety, my overwhelm, my mental, just all the shit that swims in there. So those are things you want to do more of, right? So thinking about what are the physical tools, what are the things that I know by trade, if I do these, I feel good. It helps me get that feeling that I want, that joyful feeling, that peaceful feeling, that rested feeling. Do that more, okay? Now, when I'm on walks, I'm going to get a little bit deeper with some of these things for you. But when I'm on walks, I'm listening to things that are proactive, okay? Now, before I would go on walks, it would be like, learn more business stuff. I need to learn more business strategy and marketing and I don't do that anymore. Okay. I've been in business for 20 years. I know the recipe. It's not that difficult. I mean, when you're new, everything feels difficult and it's overwhelming, but really the brass tacks of it, it's a kind of a rinse and repeat, and you just need to be delivering really good content. Like people need to really relate to what you're saying. So I can handle that stuff. So when I'm walking, I'm listening to people who are in a space mentally that I want to be in. I want to be in that vibe, right? Kathy Heller, Danielle Laporte, Joe Dispenza, like vibrating on that energy of like anything is fucking possible, right? Because I've been doing it my whole life, but not knowing I'm doing it. And now I'm going to go all in on that, right? I'm going all in on that and trusting myself because I know that works. Now, the other thing that I find is important for managing your stress and anxiety, and you might think again that these aren't things that are important, but when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. When you need the permission slip to do these things in your life, I am here for you to let you know that this is where the chicken and the egg is going to feel so tough for your brain, right? I know, Diane, but I don't have time. I can't do this. When are you going to have the time? When are you going to have the time? Because what's the sad reality is that we are waiting for retirement to do the things that we think we're love to do and we're going to want to do because we're done working, right? We're done just hustling and grinding it. And then retirement comes. And then guess what? You have a very short period of time to do many things. And it then becomes limited by your abilities at that age. So I encourage you to think about what are the things that you love doing that you're not doing, and how can you do the 1.0 version of that this week? Okay. Right. For me, I need more fun in my life. Okay. We did the whole Wheel of Hotness in the masterclass, which again, if you haven't got that, the link will be in the notes. Definitely go find that. I'll give you some great journaling prompts to kind of work more through this stuff, but adding more fun. What's fun for me is not fun for someone else. What's fun for me is going and taking a dance class, going to these little meetups where there's other women and they get to network and congregate and do little active activities and stuff, women my age, right? That's fun for me. That might not be for you, but you got to find out what that is and how can you add more of that into your life. The other thing for me is that's fun is coming back to like planting plants, curating my environment, gardening, getting my hands dirty, working with the earth and seeing the fruits of taking care of plants and watering them. Like that's my chi. And like it takes me out of that overwhelm and anxiety brain, right? I don't think about the dishes in the sink. I'm not thinking about the 3 loads of laundry I need to do and the one that's in the dryer. That's going to happen. That's going to happen. It has to happen. I'm going to need clothes to wear. It's going to happen. But that's not where my priority lies. It's finding the balance between the two so I can have a life that's enjoyable now as I'm aging. And then my other physical tools are like, when's the last time you sat with your pets, right? If you have pets or your kids and just how are you? Like, what's going on? You know, Vinny's my guy. I sit with my cat and I carry him around like a baby because he's a rag doll and just enjoying that time, like being with energy and love and light, right? And also my other physical tool that is also really important is my evening wind down / bath time ritual. Because really, to set yourself up for success for the morning, it really starts with your evening routine and the hours that come before it so you can have a restful night's sleep. And that's super duper important. So I value that tremendously and making sure that I have my wind down routine, and it could be my bath or it could be my shower. If it's a shower, like I take a fun little drink in there and a fancy glass and I just make that moment a little more enjoyable because I fucking hate washing my hair. Okay, let's be real. I'm giving you a hug with also giving you the hammer down at the same time, you know? Now let's go about the environmental piece of things and setting boundaries with myself, right? I do that often, set boundaries with myself. You know, I don't do certain things. I have a stop doing list for you, right? Like I want you to think about these things and less about like, oh my gosh, I need to do this and do that. But also what can you stop doing, right? There's so much peace in like stop doing things. It's incredible. Now, one thing that I find is super important for me is reducing stimulation. Okay. So again, ADHD plays a part in this too, but with anxiety, right? Like reducing stimuli is super important because then it feels like every notification, every ping, every this, every that is more input that I don't really want in my brain. And especially if you're a creative, if you're a leader, if you're in a role where you're like, your brain has to fire at a high function, like this is very important, right? I don't do meetings anymore on Mondays and Tuesdays. I used to do meetings on Mondays and Tuesdays. I don't do that anymore. Why? Because it gives me the Sunday scaries. I don't want the Sunday scaries. I want the Sunday like recharge because I'm excited because Monday feels so awesome that I can't wait to be in Monday, which is today. This is me recording on a Monday at 3:00 and knowing that my whole day, the podcast has been a priority. This morning when I went to the red light sauna, before I went on the treadmill and I walked and I did mobility and I like took care of me, that's the boundary. That's the boundary that I implore you to take. Okay. I started setting boundaries around meetings, right? Like in my businesses, I was like, look, we're going to move meetings to biweekly. If it's urgent in between, then you guys know how to reach me. But for team meetings, they need to be biweekly, and if it can be an email, it needs to be an email. It doesn't need to be in a meeting. It doesn't have to be an hour. We're going to get in, we're going to talk about the pressing issues. We're going to see what everybody needs and what sort of marching orders they need forward. And we're going to just move on, right? The other boundaries I set environmentally for myself is email until it's time for me to work. It's 3:00. I have not checked my email today. Does that worry me at all? No. Why? Because if there was something urgent in there, people know how to find me. The people that would need me urgently, they know how to find me on my phone. Okay. Now, I don't respond to business stuff unless it's urgent. If I have a day planned and there's like, this is the day of the plan, how the day is curated, right? Today I had blocked off, it's a content creation day. This is a creativity day. This is not a putting out fires day. If there's some fires that are simmering, they can wait till tomorrow. If there's a roaring fire, my team knows how to find me on my text messages immediately. But when we're talking about setting yourself up for success with the bedtime ritual, the AM ritual is equally as important. So when you wake up, what's the first thing that you do? Are you waking up to a blaring alarm and then you go right into looking at what's happening on Instagram or TikTok or Twitter or LinkedIn? Are you jumping into your email to see like what's in there and getting caught up in being reactive to everybody and everybody else's needs? Like taking time by yourself, the first thing in the morning is so underrated. It's so underrated. I get it. Why moms wake up, because that was me, before their kids, have their time by themselves, have their cup of tea, have their cup of coffee, read a book, sit with their journal, listen to something, they pray, they listen to something meditation or inspirational, right? There's a reason why people do these things. Now, what I used to get too in the weeds about, and I want to also bring light to this, is not getting caught up in how it needs to look compared to everybody else. Okay. So let me explain. I would get caught up in thinking, oh my God, I need to do these 15 things before every morning for me to feel like at peace or joy or like that I'm filling up my cup. And I realized that's not true. I have a Goldilocks version of what I usually compromise most days. And then there's like the 1.0 version. And then there's like the full-fledged, like full moment. And let me tell you what I mean. And I have this for a lot of things in my life that has caused me, or that has alleviated a lot of anxiety, right? So, if you are anything like me and you have a nighttime routine, you could be in front of the mirror after a shower for at least another 30 minutes. Right? You're microblading your face, you're tweezing your chin hairs, you're shaving your nose hairs, you're putting on a serum, you're waiting for it to dry, you're putting on an eye cream, then you're layering on another layer, then you're waiting for that to dry, then you're going to seal it, then you're going to put on your lip gloss, then you get a fluff. Are you tired yet? Okay. I have that version when I'm like, usually, if I'm being honest, to that degree, twice a week. Okay. Usually there's a middle Goldilocks version, and then there's a version of like, I'm fucking tired. I don't even want to go there. Okay. I suggest you have that for lots of areas of your life, because what I really stress to my clients and what I'm leading by example with here for you is I need you to just be a fucking C student. You don't need to be an A student. Okay. You don't need to. Were you an A student in high school? Great. I wasn't. Okay. I was mainly a C student. And in fact, I got a D in PE. All right. And here I am teaching health and fitness and all that, because that meant nothing, right? Be okay with being a C student and just making some progress versus none, and being like, okay, I'm hardcore. It's going to look perfect. My routine needs to look like this. I got to do this, and be so rigid, and then give yourself so much overwhelm and anxiety because you're not doing it right that you just don't do it at all. You do it like 1 or 2 weeks, and then you're like, ugh, I'm an F student for like 6 weeks. And then something happens, a vacation, or a friend asks you to be in a wedding, or you got proposed to, and then you're like, fuck, I got to get my shit together. And then you go hardcore. And then like, this is the pendulum that swings, and why, January, everybody's looking for the solution is because if they would have spent most of the year just being a C student, they wouldn't need to restart every January. Okay. So I'm asking you to find that sort of your routine can flux with where you're at in your life, right? Like what's going on. So your morning routine, find 2 to 3 things that you feel like would complement your morning in a way of starting it off with a little bit more space for you, right? Taking that time. And it could be something that you need to get back to that you've neglected. Meditation, prayer, journaling. Maybe it's just sitting and doing some stretches with some soft music in the background, right? It's not turning on the news, scrolling through your phone while you're hurriedly making breakfast, and being all up in everybody else's world. It's like being with yourself, right? Giving yourself that time. Now, I'm going to just rant on a few other things that I wrote down that I felt were important, that are sort of boundaries and things that are helping me reduce anxiety and overwhelm. And I'm just going to offer them up as suggestions for you and just try it on. Like, oh my God, what would that feel like? That would feel amazing. Great. Write that down. Give it a shot. Try it out for yourself, right? Now, what I have found is things that I'm doing that are working is I stopped using an alarm. Now, for those of you that are entrepreneurs, you run your own business or whatever, I don't know. This isn't possible for everybody. I realize that. But for me, I was like stuck to like having to get up sometimes at like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, grind, and like whatever, right? I decided that I was going to prioritize rest, deep restorative rest. Do you know how weird it is to go to bed and not have an alarm wake you up? I had to get used to that. Like, I'm 47, gonna be, well, yeah, by the time this airs, 47. And for me, I was like, what? And I thought, I work for myself. If I want it to not feel like work, I want to start my day easy and I want to ease into it. And I don't want to be blasted with a fucking alarm that like I'm constantly tossing and turning and thinking like, oh my God, is my alarm going to go off? Is my alarm going to go off? And checking the time and all that, right? I don't check the time if I wake up in the middle of the night. This is just a stupid boundary I set with myself a long time ago. Okay. This has been years, but I don't check I don't. The only time I will is if like it feels like the daytime is coming and I'm like, did I not set an alarm? And I'm kind of like paranoid about it or whatever, but that's very rarely. I trust that's not the case. Okay. So I don't do that. I don't have a TV in my room. I've talked to you guys about that before. I haven't had a TV in my room for probably 10 years. So that's not something that's a distraction that's causing, overwhelm and anxiety because I'm like watching the news or my partner's watching the news. Jack already knows that's a non-negotiable. Like we're not having a TV in the room, right? I sleep with ambient noise. So if you have to have noise on, something that people don't realize is your eyelids are very thin. And I have a lot of adults still that I see that have to sleep with the TV on. And I find that we get down to the roots of things and I encourage them to try out an experiment and just switching the TV for ambient noise. And you have to find what works for you, right? For me, it depends. I'm a mood. It's a vibe. I got to know what kind of mood I'm in. Sometimes I want like deep rain. Sometimes I want the rainforest. Sometimes I want Tibetan singing bowls. Sometimes I want ocean waves. Sometimes I want wind chimes, right? Figure it out. Play around with it and turn your goddamn TV off. Because if you think that's helping you, it's not, okay? Because your eyes are still trying to process what's going on when there is any light coming through. And that is probably not getting you into deep restorative sleep, okay? So just please promise me you will try that, okay? The other thing is that I refuse to do is, and this is kind of crazy, but because I feel like I'm a highly sensitive person, I'm very much affected by things that are going on that I'm reading or seeing. And like, that's why I don't really like scary movies and things like that. I don't do mentally jarring stuff usually, but definitely not before bedtime. No news, no listening to somebody tell me about the shit that's going on in the world that I can't control right before I go to bed. The worst person to talk to for me before bed is my father. Okay. Like I need to talk to him earlier in the day because he's going to go on about all the things that he just learned about on the news that I need to be worried about. And I'm like, Dad, I don't need to hear this right before bed. Right. So no mentally jarring stuff before bed. I don't check email before bed or social media or anything until I have set my mood for going to bed and for getting up. So there's boundaries around email time. There's boundaries around work time. I tell this to my team. Sometimes if I think of something and it's after 5 p.m., I will send them a message and I will say, there is nothing for you to do here now, except to just think about leave this here for tomorrow. So if you're watching this polo, please stop watching and revisit this tomorrow. But I just need to make sure that I don't forget something, right? And I encourage you, if you were a boss lady, that you set these boundaries for yourself and you start to teach your team how to do that as well. So you start to create a culture of people who value their personal life and value rest and recovery away from their jobs. Okay. We discussed a little bit meditation and journaling. Okay. Again, be a C student here. Don't feel like you have to meditate every day. Don't feel like you have to journal every day. Be a C student there. Walking daily is super important to me. So again, listening to some walking meditations or inspiration. I start my day with water and greens and supplements and then coffee in that order. Okay. And that's because my body's been sleeping. I've been dehydrated. I want to get in a jolt of hydration, get my GI hydrated and working. Then I want to give it some nutrients. And then I get all of my powders in and my goodies in there. And then I allow myself to then go into having a cup of coffee and then my breakfast, right? So, and my supplements come before the coffee. So that's sort of how I set myself up in the morning. Now, the other sort of boundaries I set is around my caffeine intake. So I don't like to do caffeine after 12, and I try to limit my caffeine to 2 beverages per day. Okay. So for example, this morning I made myself a latte this morning here at home. And then before I started getting into my productivity earlier this afternoon, I had a cup of puree. I think it's how you say it, tea. And it's just like a black tea that has a little bit of medium caffeine, but that's it for the day. Right? If I need a perk up in between now and then my coaching call here in a couple hours that we're going to have, then I will have like a seltzer water, or I will have some kind of like some piece of fruit or something. But I try to listen to my body and then not just pound back more caffeine, because that's going to affect your sleep. Alcohol, very minimally, okay? Because it affects my sleep. It makes me grumpy as fuck the next day, and it ultimately makes me less productive. So this is a deep conversation, because I know it plays a role in a lot of people's, what they perceive as like unwinding for the day. And I will really just kind of hold steadfast to the fact that it actually disturbs your sleep. And I think that there are all things in moderation, but I don't think consuming alcohol every day is necessarily healthy for you. So I do that very minimally. And one thing that is a muscle that I'm really working on is when I wake up, is deciding how I want to feel, right? How do I want to feel today? And then again, I talked about this before, but looking for opportunities on how to create that feeling is super important. The other thing that I don't do to kind of curate a less anxious, distracted, stress environment is the TV just doesn't run in the background in my house. Okay. This is something that I started doing many years ago, probably 15 years ago, like when I was married and had kids and stuff. I hated the TV in the background. I don't want to just hear the TV just to hear the TV. Right? So the caveats to that is I will put on, if I want to put on some music or something that's like going to create a little bit more of like a fun mood or a vibe in the house or whatever. And what's interesting is that every time I have friends come stay with me, they get home and they instantly want to buy Sonos speakers. I feel like Sonos should sponsor me, because I've had 3 people that have stayed with me that like went home and bought a Sonos house system, because when you come to my house, I have speakers throughout my house, and it's all controlled by the app on my phone, and I set the mood in my dwelling. What is the vibe that you want in your dwelling? And I will play that, and people fucking love it. And then they will go home, and then they will start curating the vibe in their house, right? So I don't have the TV on just to fill background noise, right? I put on happy playlists. I make sure that what's going into my ears is pleasant. Now, I dance more. I dance more in the house, in the kitchen, in public, with Jack. I just dancing more. We need to move our bodies more. We need to just be silly, be goofy, be okay with being just silly and being awkward. And it's actually so good for you. It's so good to help drop stress, drop cortisol. And one thing I'll do is I'll put on Spotify playlist, 2000s dance music. You're welcome. Okay. Go find that while you're cooking. So much fun. Or find the genre that you enjoy and just put it on in the background. And I think at the end of the day, there's some more little tactical things that I want to share with you, right? Like I talked about having an incentive beverage for tasks that I'm avoiding, right? And sometimes it'll be an incentive beverage in a podcast, and that'll like kind of get me through doing some laundry and just filling up my cup and listening to some really good stuff. And I will talk with Crystal, she's great to just kind of alleviate some stress. So finding somebody in your life that helps you sort of decompress is great, where you can do that for each other, and it doesn't just become like a one-sided where you get on and it's just like complaining, right? Because I've been that person, and I know that I can feel when I'm that person. But really what I want you to take away from this is, in order for you to really feel like you're making movement, is you super duper have to get real. You really have to get real about what's causing the anxiety, because that's where taking one small step is going to be pivotal for you to step out of that and really get into a space of being present in your life and creating boundaries around things that don't serve your time, your energy, your mental bandwidth. And it opens up more space for you to do things for yourself, for your highest good, like get in your movement, like eat nourishing food and snacks and things that are good for you, because you're not anxious and you're eating the pantry or you're overwhelmed, right? So I want to leave you with a few questions And this is going to be just sort of tying this all together for you. What do you need to stop doing, my friend? I want you to create a stop doing list. And then what do you need to take action on? Because a lot of times, for me, anxiety shows up as stuck energy. And if energy is stuck, that needs to be moved. It needs to be moved, right? And oftentimes we think, oh, let me just go exercise and it'll make my stress better. And I think that it helps. I think it's a great tool, but that's not oftentimes the only tool. If there's anxiety and there's something that needs to be action taken upon, then that's really where the work is. And the exercise is just sort of the vessel to help you really actualize what that next step needs to be, right? It's going to help you get clear and clear your mind so you know what that next step needs to look like. Okay. Now, if you made it this far, you probably have gleaned some things from it, which is great. Take what you want, try it on, and remember, if you hate any of it, just like when you go into a fitting room, okay, take everything I'm saying here as just an outfit that is different than what you would normally try on, right? When you go shopping, you tend to gravitate towards the same things. It's just like your thoughts. You tend to gravitate towards the same 90% of the thoughts you had the day before. But sometimes you step outside your comfort zone and you grab a couple outfits that are like, what if I was that bitch and I wore this? That's how I want you to think about these tools. I want you to think about trying them on like you're that bitch and what that would feel like. And again, sometimes it's too audacious and too much, and you just go, I could never. And you do the 1.0 version of that and find out what that is. All right, my love. So if you want to do more of this stuff, it's juicy, it's yummy, it's you. Gosh, how would you not want to? You're an amazing fucking creature. Find the link in the description or the show notes or wherever you're listening to this to a replay of the masterclass that we did from Burnout to Boss Bitch. And when you land there, if you put in your email, I don't send spam, I promise. I send you things that I would want to read. You're going to get a beautiful email that gives you the link to the masterclass video if you like to do things on video, if you want to watch us go through the whole thing, and also the audio version of it's more of a private podcast, and then also the workbook. So you can work through this on your own through the workbook or a journal aside next to it and really work through and really start to become the driver of your life. Okay. So find that link, do the work, and I'll see you in your inbox. All right. I love you, and I'll see you on the next one.